Hi, it is March 22nd, and you are listening to Healing with Dr. Daniels. This is the March 22nd, 2020 edition. Whoa. There is a lot going on in the world outside. However, uh, the title of today's broadcast is How Good Research Supports Deadly Medical Practices. And today I'm going to examine the results of a recent study on salt and health. Great results, bad science, think happens. But first, we're going to take a turpentine, take a Shilajit, update the coronavirus, and update the Vitality Capsules situation. Alrighty, first turpentine. We have our white sugar. Yay, white sugar. As the Chinese would say, everything has curative powers. The trick is to know when and how to use it. We have our little pipette. Bum, ba, da, bum. I refilled my turpentine container. Yay. Now this is a pipette. You can get these on Amazon. It's 2.5 cc's right up there at the neck before it starts getting fat. And so that's how high I fill it, because I like 2.5 cc's, which is half a teaspoon. That's what I take. Da 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 da. Yeah, stop right there. Put our top back on so we don't spill and make too big a mess. We have our spoon. Yay, spoon. Here's our sugar. This is a heaping teaspoonful, which comes out to about, so you can see there, about 2 teaspoons of sugar. You should notice, depending on the photographic quality here, that some of the sugar is getting a little bit dark. Maybe you can see better further away. Anyway, as the turpentine hits the sugar changes color and gets kind of a grayish dark color. Alright. I like to put a little water in my mouth, and that way it helps it slide all the way back down my throat with minimal contact with my taste buds. I get that all the way down in my stomach because I don't like it when it sticks here and I get the burping. Oh, bad. Not good. Alright, now it's Shilajit time. This is Shilajit. We're going to pry this open. And you can see it is waxy, just like tar. Even smells like tar. We're just going to, oops. Take this. Yeah. I don't take this every day, so when I take it, I like to make sure I get my 200 milligrams. And I've got it in there, and I'm twisting it around and pulling it out. And so there you have it. And I'll twist it around so you can see how much is on this little stick. Any little stick would do. You could use the tines of a fork. All right, this is the remainder of my drinking water. I'm going to put it in. As you can see, it does not melt easily. So we're going to do the show, and then later on, in a few minutes, when it's melted, I'll stir it up and down the hatch. Shilajit is a naturally occurring source of trace minerals, and they are awesome. So your body makes enzymes. Yay! And other proteins, hormones, a lot of stuff. And just to get stuff done. And these enzymes and hormones require cofactors, trace minerals. And these trace minerals are not always abundantly present in food that you might get from the grocery store. And so what this does is it provides a broad spectrum of trace minerals. And when you take it, you can actually feel it. Your body just starts working better. mind starts working better, or muscles start working better, or coordination is better. It is great. And you have more energy. And so it's not the kind of energy like a buzz, like, say, caffeine might give you, but it increased energy like, oh, I think I want to go clean this or clean that or do this or do that. And you can just get up and go do it. Very, very nice. Okay. So we've taken our turpentine and we've got our Shilajit brewing. Time to update the coronavirus. Oh my goodness. So in order to update the coronavirus, I have limited myself. There's so much information out there. I have limited myself to what the medical industrial complex and CDC are putting out there. Yeah. And so a lot of times when you're trying to sort stuff out, what makes the most sense is looking at the information from the, we'll call them authority sources, comparing it to your observations and experiences, and also looking for internal consistencies in the information. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, health professionals fight against COVID-19 myths and misinformation. So how do we know what's misinformation? We have no idea. What does misinformation mean? So let's see what they say. This is pretty straightforward. Well, actually, we'll see. The World Health Organization identified early in the outbreak the global wave of misinformation about the virus and dubbed the problem the infodemic. Yes, infodemic. The World Health Organization Q&A page on COVID-19 is updated frequently and addresses myths and rumors currently circulating. According to the World Health Organization website, listen carefully, the World Health Organization has reached out to social media players such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, TikTok, and Weibo, the microblogging site in China. And the World Health Organization has worked with these sites to curb the infodemic of misinformation that has used these sites for public education outreach. Sounds like censorship to me. I mean, it's just information. People, seems to me, should be allowed to decide what they think is true. Not everybody agrees on everything. Reasonable minds may differ. And so what the World Health Organization says, no. We are not allowing a diversity of opinion that will not be tolerated. Anything we don't agree with, it's a myth, and we're going to bust it. Okay, got it. Now they have myth-busting infographics. All right, let's take a look. We have a myth-busting infographic. So I was practicing medicine in the United States. And I was upset that people were starting all kinds of outrageous rumors about me. They just made up all kinds of crazy stories. And so I was talking to one of my friends who has a lot of influence in a lot of things. And I said to him, this is just terrible. They're making up all these stories about me. Oh, I want it to stop. And so you know what he said? He said, the reason people are making up stories about you, Jennifer, is because they want information, and you are not putting out information that's answering their questions. So if you want information out there that's accurate, you need to put out information that's accurate that answers people's questions. And so what the local newspapers did was they actually started a Dr. Daniels update series. And so at least every 2 months, the local newspaper did a expose on what Dr. Daniels is up to, and they would ask me a bunch of questions, and people's curiosity was satisfied, and the rumors actually stopped. So really, the CDC could do the same. They could just answer people's questions. So let's see what they are doing. So there's all kinds of information out there on coronavirus where you read it, you're like, is this true? So when I went to the Mythbusters page for the CDC has, the Mythbusters page, these are the facts, I expected them to point by point address each of the 20, 40, even 50 myths that they disagreed with. Here's what I got. You cannot make this up. I want to reiterate, this is March 2020. Okay, in other words, this is not the Dark Ages. Okay, number one, the myth is that the disease has something to do with race or ethnicity. So the fact to correct this is that disease, coronavirus in particular, can make anyone sick regardless of their race or ethnicity. What about age? That's a question that people have. They didn't say that. They didn't answer that question. So they are saying this disease can make anyone of any race ill. But they didn't answer the question, which is on everybody's mind. Okay. So now we have an opening, an area for people to converse and put forth a variation of opinions, because the CDC has not given an answer in that area. Okay. Next, for most people, now most means more than 50%, just so we can be clear, the immediate risk of becoming ill from the virus is low. Now, I left out a lot of words. Let me read you the whole thing that they said here. For most people, that's more than half, the immediate risk, that means right now, today, they don't answer the question about next week, next month. Okay, so people are speculating on the next week, next month, the part that this does not answer. For most people, which is more than 50%, they don't answer the question. Is it 50%? Is it 60%? Is it 90%? What is that percentage? So now we have an opening, an area for speculation. So for most people, again, we have 50% worth of speculation here. Immediate risk, we speculate over anything beyond immediate, like say, 2 days from now. Becoming seriously ill. Well, what's serious? Are we got playfully ill or seriously ill? So now we can have speculation as to what constitutes seriously ill from the virus that causes COVID-19 is thought to be. You mean you don't know? Low. Well, low. What's low? Is it 1%, 5%, 0.5%, 10%? So then this information to bust whatever they think might be the myth gives no information at all. In fact, it invites more speculation and more myths, more discussion. And so it says older adults and people of any age with underlying health conditions such as diabetes, lung disease, heart disease are at greater risk of severe illness from COVID. Okay, so older adults, what's the age break? Is it 50? Is it 60? Is it 70? Is it 80? Don't know. Again, more room for speculation, raises questions. Of any age with underlying health conditions such as diabetes, lung disease, heart disease are at greater risk of severe illness. Greater risk? How much greater risk? Are they at the same risk? First of all, we don't know from the previous question what the risk is for the population. So maybe the risk for the population is 0.1%. Well, what's the risk for a person with these diseases? What is the range of the risk? So again, this myth-busting fact answers no questions. Fact number 3. So fact number 1 and fact number 2 have not answered any questions at all. Fact number 3. Someone who has completed quarantine or has been released from isolation does not pose a risk of infection to other people. Well, what about someone who's not completed quarantine? Well, if you've completed quarantine, can you still be exposed to the virus and get an illness? Completing quarantine just means you've been away from other people for I don't know, maybe 2 weeks. It does not mean that you've been exposed to the virus, and does not mean that you have an infection. We don't know. So completing a 2-week period of sitting in a room staring at your belly button means you're no longer infectious. Well, that raises a lot of questions, especially when a quarantine individual has no test of being positive. So you don't have to test positive in order to be quarantined, just saying. So again, this answers no questions. Number 4, there are simple things you can do to help keep yourself and others healthy. All we're doing is helping here. Like, So because these simple things, whatever they are, only help. So what is help? Is that reduces your risk by 1%, 2%, 10%? We don't know. And so then it opens a door for, well, these things help, but what else can I do to help more? So you can wash your hands often with soap and water. I was a medical doctor. I practiced medicine. I washed my hands between every patient. What did I get? I got a bunch of sores in the back of my hands. Yep, that's what I got. Especially after blowing your nose, coughing, or sneezing, going to the bathroom, and before eating or preparing food. So washing your hands after blowing your nose, coughing, sneezing, that just keeps you from spreading it to other people. Washing your hands after going to the bathroom keeps you from getting it from the person who used the toilet before you. Washing your hands before eating, again, protects you, and before preparing food protects other people. I say this because if you live alone, there's no reason to wash your hands. I mean, if you're not preparing food for other people, all you're doing is just recirculating the germs you already have. It's, no big deal. Again, blowing your nose, coughing, or sneezing, these are germs, if you live alone, these are germs that are leaving your body, and if they go back in, it's like really no big deal because they're there anyway. And do you really think you coughed off the last germ? Of course you didn't. So this information doesn't really answer people's questions. So if you live alone, then the risk of spreading it to someone else, forget it, is zero. You're not going to infect anyone by blowing your nose in private, coughing in private, sneezing in private, or using your own bathroom in private because guess what? It's only your bathroom. No one else's feces are going into this toilet. There's no way to spread or contract anything. And same with preparing food. So if you live alone, this information they've given you is totally useless because if you're blowing your nose, the germs coming out are already in your body. And you didn't blow out the last germ, so there's more where that came from. Same with coughing and sneezing. And going to the bathroom, whatever came out your bottom end, guess what? There's a whole lot more left in you, just the way it works. Okay. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth with unwashed hands. Again, all of this, if you live alone, this is useless. Stay home when you are sick. Okay, so stay home when you're sick just means you're not going to spread it to other people. Cover your cough or sneeze with a tissue, then throw the tissue in the trash. Again, if you're around other people. So if you're within 3 or 4 feet of other people, which most people usually are not, it's just the way the things work. So this information doesn't really answer people's concerns, which is, how can I create a situation where if I come in contact with the virus, I can stay healthy? This does not answer that question at all. Next. So you can see this invites speculation. This opens the door to the people who might be talking about vitamin C or silver or whatever. You can help stop COVID-19 by knowing the signs and symptoms. Yes. Fever, cough, shortness of breath. Really? You have to wait until things get that bad? And cough. What if you're coughing all the time anyway? And hey, if you have a cough, how about a glass of water? If that makes it go away, are you okay? So again, no information here. And if you've been in close contact with a person known to have the virus, or if you live in or have recently traveled from an area with ongoing spread of the virus. What's close contact? Is that within 3 feet? Is that in the same house? Is it in the same city? We don't know. They don't say. So what we have then is we have this fact sheet. It only has 5 facts. And each one of the facts is so vague, it doesn't answer any questions. This would start a rumor mill. You know what I'm saying? And they haven't mentioned any of the disinformation that they disagree with. And if they mentioned it, that would be helpful. So the World Health Organization has not given us useful information. If that's all the information they have to give, then they've given no information. All right. Let's see what the doctors are doing. Yeah, the doctors. Health professionals. Okay, we got that. No more misinformation. First data. The World Health Organization comes up with first data on stability and resistance of SARS coronavirus compiled by members of the World Health Organization Laboratory Network. All right. Well, we're great. There's a table, compilation of data on the resistance against environmental factors and disinfectants. This information has been provided by members of the World Health Organization Collaborative Network on SARS diagnosis. All right. More detailed information on methods used and material used is being compiled and will be available shortly. So what they're saying is, here's the information. We're not telling you how we came up with it, and we'll tell you that later. So you have no way of independently making any assessment of what they say. All right. Survives in stool and urine. So virus is stable in feces, that would be expected in the body, bodily, material, at room temperature for 2 days. It's stable in feces at room temperature for 2 days. All right, wait a minute. Let's break this down. So you've got feces. Where does your feces go? Can we say in the toilet? All right, in the toilet. But wait, not all of it goes in the toilet. Sometimes, in fact, more often than you'd like to know, the feces ends up a little bit on your hands and a little bit on the toilet seat itself. So what they're saying then is at room temperature, the virus is stable on the toilet seat for 2 days. Let's be clear. So if you clean your toilets in the house once a day, or if you clean your toilet with disinfectant after someone else uses it before you sit on it, you're not going to catch anything from their feces. You just wiped it off. So if you have your own dedicated toilet that you and only you are using, then the stability of feces is irrelevant. Irrelevant, at least in that toilet setting. And that's the most frequent point of transmission. The next point of transmission is doorknobs. That would be a metal surface. Virus is more stable in stool from diarrhea patients, which has higher pH than normal stool. But again, if someone in your house has diarrhea, assign them their own toilet. The average house in the United States has more than one toilet. So you can assign anyone with diarrhea to one toilet that no one else uses. Very simple. All right, so we got rid of the virus, stool, and urine risk. Done. Disinfectants. Virus loses infectivity after exposure to commonly used disinfectants and fixatives. Excuse me, can we get a list here? No. They're not going to give any lists. No list given. So now, again, this opens up an avenue for speculation. If you don't want disinformation, then give information. Virus survival in cell culture supernatant. What's that? Well, if you have a cell culture that is gel, boiled animal bones, and they put even more food into it, of course the virus is expected to survive in that. So 21 days in a very nutritious medium at 4 degrees Celsius and minus 8 degrees Celsius. This is normal. All viruses are cold stable, just for your information. So this is not anything, Heat at 56 degrees Celsius kills the SARS coronavirus. What's 56 degrees Celsius? Yeah. 132.8 degrees. That's pretty hot. That is pretty hot. Most viruses are not heat stable at 132 degrees. They die a lot quicker, like 110 degrees. That's why the human fever is felt to be so healing. QMH. Okay. Okay, so here they have a chart. Actually, they list areas where it kills or kills. Okay, survival time, condition. Now, this is interesting. The virus spiked in baby stool. Okay, so they used baby stool in the lab. Survival time was 3 hours, so baby stool does not seem to be hospitable to the virus. Then they used normal stool, 6 hours survival. So this is interesting. So the virus only survives in stool for 6 hours. So if the virus only survives in stool for 6 hours, then how can you say it's going to survive in feces, which is stool, for 2 days? This is conflicting information. In diarrhea stool, it will last 4 days. Again, we still don't get up to... Okay, so we got the 4 days there. So they say it's stable in stool to 2 days, but the scientists who've done the studies say it's only good for 6 hours. Another source who did research said 2 days. Okay. Urine, 24 hours. Virus culture medium, bovine serum. That means bovine blood, more or less, basically. 2 days. So all you eating bone broth might not be a good idea. Virus culture medium and bone broth, 1 hour. So anywhere from 2 days, 1 hour. Baby calf serum, kills it cold. Eat your calf liver. Acetone, formaldehyde, paraformaldehyde, Clorox, or alcohol. 5 minutes. So this is why the bleach is flying off the shelf, and so is the alcohol. 4 days, bovine serum, fetal calf serum, 4 days, calf serum, 4 days, fetal calf serum, 30 minutes. So these are variable. So yeah, I wonder who's doing this research. This is quite a lot of variability. Virus culture, 21 days. So in other words, if they isolate it in virus culture and they feed it all the food it likes, they can get it to live for 21 days. That's not very robust, just saying. Here's what we want to know. On a plastered wall, 24 hours, and the stool 36 hours. So the stool is our control. So it's going to last on a plastered wall for 1 day, 24 hours. Plastic surfaces, that would be your toilet seat, 36 hours. The control in the stool was 22 hours at that time. Formica surface, that would be the countertop in your kitchen if it's formica, 36 hours. Stainless steel, that's your doorknob, 36 hours. Wood, that would be your furniture. Cotton cloth, clothing, 12 hours. Pig skin, more than 24 hours. I don't know why pig skin, but I mean, if you got pig skin, maybe you're talking about a football. But if you're eating pig skin, you're obviously going to cook it at a temperature greater than 132 degrees. A glass slide, 72 hours, which would be 3 days. And paper file cover. So if you have it on your hands and you touch a piece of paper, it's going to live on a piece of paper for 24 hours. The question is, can someone else catch it from the piece of paper? Don't know. So here we have it. So you can catch SARS from touching a plastered surface and then licking your finger. It's a plastered wall, call it sheetrock. Plastic surface, depending on what country you're in, that's a toilet seat. Formica surface, that is countertop, depending on what kind of counter you have. Stainless steel, could be a doorknob, could be a counter. Wood, furniture. Cotton cloth, your clothing. Glass slide, well, most people aren't putting stuff on glass slides. And paper file cover, which would be your office stuff. So if somebody who's infected handles a piece of paper it can be spread to someone else by them receiving the same piece of paper, which means mask, sneezing, hand washing, all that, forget it. Out the window. So what this is examining is, can it be transmitted by fomites? Fomites are inanimate objects that are handled by an infected person and spread the disease to a non-infected person. And so what this says is, yes, it can be spread that way. And so clearly, with this survivability in crowded, frequently used places, it can spread pretty quickly. Well, I won't say pretty quickly, but it can spread quickly. So in other words, if you have a turnstile in a subway station that's metal, turnstile is metal, then obviously in a 24-hour period, a lot of people touch that turnstile. But what do they touch it with? This is March. It's cold in those cities that have those turnstiles, like New York City. People are wearing gloves, so it's not an issue. Okay, so what we're finding here is the transmissibility is much higher and much more immediate in fomites than in coughing. So that's good to know. What else? Coronavirus may cause environmental contamination through fecal shedding. So does that mean we can't flush our toilets, or what are we talking about? The toilet bowl, sink, and bathroom door handle of an isolation room housing a patient with the novel coronavirus tested positive for the virus. Exactly. So, you know how they laugh and make fun of it? Oh, you can't catch anything from a toilet seat or a doorknob. That's exactly where this stuff hangs out. So, again, if you're living alone and you're the only one touching your toilet seats and doorknobs, you're pretty good condition. And air outlet fans and other room sites also tested positive. Taken together, these findings suggest a need for strict adherence to environmental and hand hygiene to combat significant environmental contamination through respiratory droplets and fecal shedding. So what they're saying then is someone coughing on you is really not very likely, because a cough droplet does not linger in the air for 24 hours. That's not the way it works. So the virus is clearly capable of contaminating bathroom sinks and toilets. That wouldn't have been the first place I would have thought of before this study, he said in an interview. Well, dude, you obviously haven't studied other viruses. You have not looked at just the spread of virus and parasites. It's called the oral fecal route. It's taught in second year medical school. Like, where have you been, under a rock? I don't know. So the report by Dr. Sansa co-authors included a total of 3 patients. That's a pretty small sample. Housed in airborne infection isolation rooms and a dedicated SARS outbreak center in Singapore. For each patient, surface samples were taken from 26 sites in the isolation room. So they took samples on day 4 and day 10 of the illness, while the patient was still symptomatic, and some samples were taken 2 days after cleaning. However, for third patient, samples were taken before routine cleaning. In this case, 13 of 15 room sites were positive, including air outlet fans, while 3 of 5 toilet seats, 60%, were positive as well, though no contamination was found in the anteroom corridor or in the air samples. This is important to understand. So air contamination is much less effective as a spread than these fixed surfaces where any virus can linger for 24 hours plus. So this patient had 2 stool samples positive for SARS, no diarrhea, and had upper respiratory tract involvement without pneumonia. So the person had a cough. The fact that swabs of the air exhaust outlets tested positive suggests that virus-laden droplets could be displaced by airflows and end up on vents or other equipment, co-authors report. Have you heard of the Legionnaires epidemic? So HVAC is definitely a route of transmit for any respiratory illness. That's heating, air conditioning, and duct systems. It's called HVAC. Heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. And there is technology out there that prevents infection from HVAC systems. But when you have people in a closed space, like you're telling people, stay home, stay home, stay home, in a closed space, and they have poor HVAC system, that HVAC system, which is the duct system that conveys air, can literally contaminate and poison them. And that's what happened with the Legionnaires situation in Philadelphia in the 70s. These old guys got together for their little convention, and they stayed at a hotel in Philadelphia. And because they were old, they were susceptible, and the air conditioning system just dumped all this bacteria on them, and bam, they died. A lot of them just died. So HVAC, what's the answer? Open the windows. The risk of transmission from contaminated footwear is likely low, as evidenced by negative results in the corridor, they wrote. While the study included only a small number of patients, the findings represent an important and useful contribution to literature on coronavirus disease. Every day we're getting more information, and each little piece of the puzzle helps us in the overall management of individuals, he said in the interview. So in other words, putting someone in a quarantine room situation is a very bad idea. Because they contaminate the whole room. The ventilation is poor, and anyone walking into that room, even with a hazmat suit on, is at increased risk of becoming contaminated. That's a take-home message there. And that, hey, watch those toilet seats and doorknobs. But wait. We have an article from the New England Journal of Medicine. Yes. They give us a lot of help on this. So before we go too deeply into this article, the New England Journal of Medicine, let us understand that the medical industrial complex admits to killing 225,000 people a year. Well, 250,000 people a year. 250,000. Yeah. Okay. That is 10% of all people who die this year are going to die from their medical care, not from their illness. All right, got that. The death rate in the United States is more or less 1%, 0.91%. That's up from 0.8%, which it was 10 years ago. The point here is, if we use round numbers then, we've got a death rate in the United States of 1%, round number. The medical industrial complex admits to killing 0.1%, or 1/10 of those people. Okay, so 0.1% of all people just show up at the doctor's office or a hospital, healthy, sick, doesn't matter. Boom, you're going to die from your medical care. Okay, get that. So in the face of that, let's take a look at this. So the death rate associated with coronavirus may be considerably less than 1%, instead of the 2% reported by some groups. And this is March 2nd. But this is important to get. The editorial appeared alongside a report that characterized 1,099 patients with laboratory-confirmed COVID-19 from 552 hospitals in China. They report a death rate of 1.4% among the 1,099 patients with laboratory-confirmed COVID. If one assumes the number of asymptomatic or minimally symptomatic cases is several times as high as the number of reported cases, the case fatality rate may be considerably less than 1%. This suggests the overall clinical consequences of COVID-19 may ultimately be more akin to those of a severe seasonal influenza, watch this, which has a case fatality rate of approximately 0.1%. In other words, no more deadly than seeing your doctor. Or pandemic influenza, rather than to a disease similar to SARS or MERS, which has case fatality rates of 9 to 10% and 36% respectively. Okay. Fossey and colleagues also said research is in full swing to develop a vaccine. And they write that the NIH expects the first patients will enter phase 1 trials by early spring. So, important thing to get is the death rate from having a positive test result, let's be clear, is pretty small. And is about equal to your death rate from seeing your doctor and doing whatever he tells you. Now, that's their estimate of the death rate. I took an estimate myself, and my estimate is 4 times that, but let's use their more conservative, optimistic estimate because we don't want any, no fear mongering here. Okay, so we've figured out it's just friggin' not that deadly. We figured out that the World Health Organization is not giving any answers. In fact, they're raising more questions than they answer, which, of course, leaves wide open any speculation by any other individual. But the point here is the evidence at the moment now is having the virus, testing positive for the virus, is as deadly as testing negative for the virus. It's an important concept. It is terrible that Trump is blocking the gate to coronavirus information, says an ethicist. Now, let's just stop right now. We have looked at the information released by the World Health Organization, which is basically no information at all. So if Trump is going along with the information put out by the World Health Organization, then that's no information at all. And you have to honestly concede that it's the World Health Organization blocking information, if indeed there more information is available. So the bottom line in this article is put a doctor in charge of the coronavirus situation. More work for doctors. And that's really a pretty self-serving position. All right. So this is how doctors treat COVID patients. This is from March 13. It's pretty recent. So what can you expect if you call up your doctor and say, Doc, I think I've got it. All right. This is what they're really, they are endorsing this, and this is what your doctor's going to do. And you can do it yourself, quite honestly. So the first step is careful triage. When patients call one of the 17 clinics of the Health Point system, nurses gauge how sick are they. Do they have a high fever? Do they have shortness of breath? Do they have a chronic illness like diabetes, heart disease, or a lung condition that will increase the risk for infection and complications? If a patient has mild symptoms, we ask them to stay home or to check back in 24 hours. In other words, doctors will tell you don't come to the office, which is a reasonable thing since, again, medical death rate, 0.1%, viral death rate, 0.1%, so here we are. The doctor can kill you or the virus can kill you. It'll turn out the same. For more moderate symptoms, we ask them to come in. We clearly mark on the schedule that it's a respiratory patient who will be sent to a separate area. If the patient is severe, we don't even see them, and we send them directly to the hospital or the emergency room. Okay, so let's say you have no symptoms, and you're worried as heck, and you just want to be tested. Don't worry about it. Stay home. Just, have a glass of chamomile tea or something. Just calm yourself down. Let's say you have some symptoms, but you're able to get yourself dressed and get to the doctor's office on your own power. You should call your doctor. Let him know you think you've got SARS, and he will have, when you arrive, a mask waiting for you to put on and put you in the corner over there, yes, until he can get around to seeing you. And if you're coughing so bad that you can't even drive yourself, you need someone else to drive you, or better yet, how about an ambulance? Go to the hospital. So you can triage yourself. So then what happens? So if you stay home, and that's easy. You just sit around, stay home, drink your chamomile tea, and, you either get better or you don't. So if you go to the hospital, any patient with fever, cough, and shortness of breath, showing up with a history of travel to a country with high ongoing transmission, or a credible history of exposure, should promptly be evaluated for COVID. But wait, so in other words, if you have fever, cough, shortness of breath, but you don't have exposure and you haven't been to a country with high ongoing transmission, you still don't qualify for a test. So just chill. So this infectious disease guy is in charge of AIDS and evangelist illness, so he's especially fit for this particular epidemic. We recommend obtaining baseline, complete blood count, metabolic panel, liver function tests, and a procalcitonin level. These are all clues for COVID-19. And they can see leukopenia in 45% of patients. Well, what about the other 55%? Well, we don't know. So it's a very poor indicator, these tests. And lymphocytopenia, which is low white count, seen in 85% of patients in cases series from China. Okay. And it's respiratory virus polymerase chain reaction panel to rule out other pathogens. In other words, it doesn't test for COVID. This is one time we are grateful when someone tests positive for the flu. If the flu is negative and other common respiratory infections are negative, then we do a COVID-19 test. Now, why do we do that? Well, actually, honestly, there's not enough tests to go around. And quite frankly, just because you test positive for the flu doesn't mean the flu is causing your symptoms. You could still be COVID positive. So this is a faulty logic, faulty reasoning process that they have in place. But the test results may be delayed. It takes 8 hours, but commercial labs take up to 4 days. All patients with respiratory symptoms are treated as persons under investigation, for whom isolation precautions are required. In addition, for those patients, use of personal protective equipment by caregivers is required. Okay. Diagnosis should be based on detection of SARS-CoV-2 because chest x-rays for COVID-19 are not specific and could be, well, anything. It could be anything. So supportive care. Once a patient's admitted, supportive care entails maintaining fluid status. I mean, really, you could drink some water at home. Like, just do it. And nutrition and supporting physiological functions until we heal. It's treating complications and organ support, whether that means providing oxygen all the way to ventilator support and just waiting it out. If a patient progresses to acute respiratory distress syndrome, it becomes tougher. Yeah, tougher. But again, you gotta understand, there is no treatment, there is no remedy, there is no cure. There is no medicine your doctor can give you to lessen your chances of death. It's like, yeah, supportive care. They give you a glass of water, put it through your IV, make it look dramatic, and, yeah. Yeah. Remdesivir has been used in a few patients on a compassionate use basis. That means because they get sick of seeing them suffering, they're just using it even though there's no evidence it works. It's a nucleotide analog, and like other drugs of that class, it disrupts nucleic acid production in the patient as well as the virus. Some data, not all, suggests, doesn't clearly indicate, that it might, but then again it might not, has some effectiveness. Well, that's pretty weak. That is like seriously weak. Antibiotics are reserved for patients suspected of having concomitant, that means concurrent, bacterial or fungal infections. So why would you want to give an antibiotic for someone with a fungal infection? Beats me. Because antibiotics make fungal infections worse, just for those of you who are not aware. Lieber said clinicians should be alerted to the big 3 signs of secondary infection. Fever, which, they already have fever, cough, and difficulty breathing. Elevated white count. Well, the elevated white count is the opposite of COVID. COVID is a low white count. And lactic acidosis. All right. Immunosuppressed patients are at elevated risk for secondary infection. All right. So all they're going to do then is supportive care, and you can do that at home. Take a glass of water and chill. And you can even order oxygen. Say, hey, bring the oxygen to my house. And then they can manage the complications. And so if the supportive care does not work, well, patients do die. Mostly, though, through an inability to ventilate even when supported with oxygen. Others may develop sepsis, that's an infection, or a syndrome of multi-system organ failure with kidneys and endothelial collapse, making it difficult to maintain blood pressure. It's like having a leaky hose. Can't maintain blood pressure. It's a vicious cycle in which everything gets overworked. Off and on treatments can sometimes break the cycle. Again, they give you more oxygen, maybe a transfusion, some dialysis. Yeah. And we just wait for healing to occur. So there's nothing your doctor does that creates healing. Just saying. Step 5 is send the person home. What are the criteria for discharge? Well, nobody knows. Patients who clinically improve are sent home with instructions to remain in isolation. They may be tested again for virus before or after discharge. Maybe, and then, well, maybe not. The situation's unprecedented. It means we've never seen it before, which means they don't know what they're doing. We're swimming in murky water right now, which means they can't really see too far ahead. They don't know anything. So there's no vaccine. In many cases are subclinical, which means no symptoms. And COVID-19 has to spread through the country before it infects a critical mass of people who will develop immunity. It's too late to contain. So you can't contain it, which means, well, what's with the isolation? Just like let it go. Just let it go. Okay, so this is very contradictory. So we want to put them in isolation, but really it's too late for isolation. Everyone just has to come down with it, and the folks who live will just live. And the folks who get it will become immune. Now remember, there's no such thing as immunity. People can get infected with things many times, like strep throat, for example, or herpes outbreaks. These things can happen many times. Okay, so we are there. So don't expect much from your doctor. Oh, this is really sad, and you got to get this one. Okay, so we're gonna repeat this. Make sure you understand it. Flattening the curve. Viral graphic shows COVID-19 containment needs. All right, all you need to know about this is flattening the curve. That's it. And so what the graphic says is there's two curves here. There's a tall peak curve, and there's a flatter curve. And so the area under each curve is identical. The area under the curve represents the number of cases of the virus. And so what the medical industrial complex says, well, we only can treat or evaluate this number of people with exposure and symptoms. So what we want to do is we want to have an isolation program so we lower the number of symptoms to the amount we can contain. And then the infection itself will actually last a longer period of time. But during that time, we get to make money off of and treat a greater number of people. Because those unable to access treatment who would get better on their own will now be treated, and the system will gain revenue from treating them. Excuse me, can we get a program or plan that's going to somehow help people be healthier or whatever? No. Industry says not interested. We're going to flatten the curve, which means same number of people, same number of infections, same number of exposures, same number of deaths. We just want to make sure that the healthcare industry has the ability to collect money for each and every one of them, and we don't miss any billings. They had the nerve to write a whole article about this. And so we have a relatively limited capacity with intensive care unit beds to begin with, she says. And she points out that the COVID-19 cases come on the top of a severe flu season, which means the vaccine didn't work again this year. And the usual cases hospitals see, so the bar on the graphic is even lower than it usually would be. The bar meaning how many cases the medical industrial complex can evaluate and bill for. We can't stop the virus. We can hope to contain it and slow down the rate of infection, she said. So right now, we need to shut down all the schools, preschools, and universities, mess up their revenue, and shut down public transportation, and have people stay home, not for a day, but a couple of weeks, and then we can lower the spread rate to a number that the medical industrial complex can handle and bill for, and we can make sure in an orderly way that we process and get paid for each and every person who might be a part of the epidemic. That is sad. That is so sad. And they would say things like this in medical school, and I would say, well, what about getting people better? Like, Jennifer, you don't understand. Okay. So today's topic, we didn't get to it. So we're going to rename the episode Coronavirus Update. But, so what's the moral of the story here? Your doctor has no clue. Your doctor has no plan to treat you. The medical system is not a resource in terms of your health care. That's the short story. The even shorter story is the coronavirus appears to be, well, imaginary, and appears to be no more deadly than health itself. Since we're all going to die, let's put that out there, we're all going to die, then there is an underlying death rate, and that underlying death rate is 0.9%, call it 1% in the United States. And the coronavirus is simply a very small fraction of that, and is not going to contribute to making 2020 any higher number of dead people or sick people than had the coronavirus never been mentioned. So the coronavirus right now is an idea. And as far as the cases in other countries, I'm sitting in other countries. So our cases are not diagnosed by any test. They're diagnosed by symptoms only because, well, we don't rank high enough to rate tests. And so what we have going on really is a game of he said, she said, and finger pointing in the place of any kind of scientific diagnosis. That's the bad news. The good news is everyone's fine and healthy and doing great. Even better news is, again, any time off you have from work, put it to good use, entertain yourself, relax, chill. There does not appear to be a health issue out there. Okay, Vitality Capsules update. We've identified the missing ingredient and we are obtaining it. The issue is that the FDA issued an alert declaring agents that cause bowel movements to be, well, deadly. So we had to overcome that situation. And things are moving along, and we'll give an update as to when we can actually give an exact date as to when Vitality Capsules will actually become available. Oops, let's drink our Shilajit. And we'd like to answer some questions. Yes, I'd like to answer some questions. I got some questions of my own, as a matter of fact. All right, questions. Here we are. First question. So Kim says, I had crunched the numbers a couple of days ago. The coronavirus death rate outside of China was up to 3%. Data come from the World Health Organization. Any idea what's going on here or what people are really dying from in the U.S.? Love your class and your show. Don't retire yet. We need you. Okay, thanks, Kim. All right. So first of all, there is a testing bias. So if you only test people who have symptoms or are about to die, then you get a very, very small denominator of infected cases. And the numerator of the number who die become higher. So that inflates your numbers by who you choose to test. So if you only choose to test people who are extremely ill, then you have a smaller denominator. You have a 3% death rate. And literally, you are testing a subset of humans who, whether they test negative or positive, have a higher probability of death. Why is this being done? So in the medical community, medical professionals are told there's a shortage of tests. And so we're only testing people who are seriously ill. But a person who's seriously ill, whether it's coronavirus or not, has a higher probability of death. So right now, that's what we are seeing. And so we can expect that apparent death rate to continue to rise. But if you look at the subset from which they are testing, the death rate among those who have coronavirus and those who don't have coronavirus is the same. Example, it was noted that people who are older, like 75 plus, are dying, are a large part of the death. So those people have a probability of death, a random probability of death, of 3 to 7%. So again, if the people dying are those in the population who already have an intrinsically higher probability of dying, then you have to compare their coronavirus death rate to the death rate of the subset, the population subset that you're testing. And so since we're not testing everybody, then we don't have the proper denominator. Hey, Dr. Daniels. I was wondering if you could help us understand why they're making such a big deal out of the coronavirus when we have so many other viruses every year. I know you tell us not to worry, and you explained in the last show things about the testing, but why is everything being closed, and why are they making such a big deal about it? So they're making it, and we don't know who we don't know who these people are, but whoever's controlling the media is making a big deal out of this to distract you from other things that are happening. So whenever you see something like this, that is just this big, huge thing, you have to immediately say, wait, what else is happening? What else is happening? So the coronavirus is a big distraction to just take your attention away from other things that might be more difficult to carry out if your attention was directly focused on it. So what should you focus your attention on? I would say if you're a regular person, let's say net worth less than 5 million, let's just say. Even if your net worth is higher than that, I would say you need to focus on 1, your water supply, your shelter, and your food. And waste removal. So like keep your toilet flushing. And, hopefully they'll keep picking up the trash. That's pretty much the size of it. So make sure those things are taken care of. All right. The next thing to take a look at is what else is happening in the world. If you look around, you see that the stock market appears to be collapsing. It appears to be collapsing in many different countries. And so what you have to understand then is your attention is being diverted away from a lot of economic events. And there's a huge, huge redistribution of wealth going on. So people who had money, a lot of them aren't going to have money going forward. And people who, the money's going to go someplace. I don't know where it's going to go. But it's just like the Great Depression. So if you study the Great Depression, you'll see that it was engineered. And the purpose of the Great Depression was to deflate currencies, particularly the U.S. currency, and to redistribute wealth. So that's all I have to say about that. Would this virus be controlled with the use of turpentine oil treatment? Absolutely, yes, it would be. Again, you have to understand there's no virus, right? So it doesn't exist. But would viruses in general be controlled? Absolutely. Okay, we have reached the end of our hour. This has turned out to be a coronavirus update. Our actual topic we'll do at a later date. Okay, thank you. And as always, think happens.